Many applique designs look harder than they really are because the shapes are created by overlapping other shapes. This is certainly the case with many of the flowers in the birth flower block of the month patterns. I'm Kathy Wiley, and in this tutorial we will take a closer look at overlapping applique and talk about how to handle these shapes with needle turn and Appliquick turned edge applique. Let's begin by looking at an example of a flower with overlapping applique. This is our carnation from the January block. The numbers on the patches indicate the order in which the patches should be sewn. Shapes with a lower number will be overlapped by shapes with a higher number. In the birth flowers block of the month patterns, each flower has its own number, and then each patch within that flower has a number. So this carnation is number 20, and each carnation petal is numbered after the decimal point. 20.1 would be sewn first, followed by 20.2, and so on. Any edge of a shape that is covered by another shape does not need to be turned under. This is the beauty of overlapping applique. But it is important to understand how this works, so let's go through the carnation patch by patch. 20.1 is overlapped by 20.2, 20.4, and 20.5. The edges that are covered by other shapes do not need to be turned under. So only this outside edge of 20.1 would be turned under. 20.2 is overlapped by 20.3 and 20.4. So only this outer edge of 20.2 would be turned under. 20.3 is overlapped by 20.6 and 20.7, so only this part of 20.3 would be turned under. 20.4 is overlapped by 20.5, 20.6, and 20.8, so only this part of 20.4 would be turned under. 20.5 is overlapped by 20.8 and 21. So only this part of 20.5 would be turned under. Do you get the idea? So now you try. Take a good look at 20.6 and see if you can figure out which part of the shape would be turned under. 20.6 is overlapped by 20.7, 20.8, and 21. So only this part of 20.6 would be turned under. Did you get it right? This is the part of 20.7 that would be turned under, and this is the part of 20.8 that would be turned under. Now that we understand how the numbering system indicates the overlapping sequence, let's take a look at how we will prepare and sew our overlapping applique. Let's quickly review how patches are prepared for needle turn applique. For more details, please visit the Preparing for Applique tutorial. Each patch is traced onto freezer paper and cut out to make a template. The template is ironed onto the right side of the applique fabric, and then the stitching lines are marked by tracing around the outside edges of the freezer paper. Here is our patch 20.1 prepared for needle turn applique. The background fabric has been marked with our entire applique design, so we would line up patch 20.1 with the marked lines on the background and needle turn just the edge that is not overlapped by any other shapes. I like to take a running stitch in the seam allowance of the edges that are not being turned under. And do you see how the marked lines on the applique edges that are not turned under become the placement lines for the next patches? When we go to sew patch 20.2, we will follow the marked line on the background fabric and the marked line on 20.1 where the patches overlap. Now let's take a look at how overlapping applique would work with the Appliquick method for turned edge applique. For this method, templates are prepared by tracing and cutting out each shape from Appliquick lightweight fusible interfacing. The interfacing template is ironed onto the wrong side of the applique fabric, and the fabric is cut out, leaving a seam allowance. The seam allowance is turned under before sewing using water-soluble glue and Appliquick rods. So for overlapping applique, how will we know which edges to turn and which edges to leave unturned? Here's a system that worked for me. Mark the edges that will not be turned by tracing around the fusible interfacing. Remember that you are working from the back now, so your shape will be reversed from the way it appears on the pattern. If you find it confusing to figure out which are the unturned edges while looking at the patch reversed, you could try turning your pattern over and looking at it on a light box. Now when you go to turn under the seam allowance with the Appliquick rods, you will know to only turn under the unmarked edges. When it comes to sewing the Appliquick prepared patches to the background, you will obviously only sew the turned edges. You may be able to see your marked line through to the right side of the applique, which you can then use as a placement line for future overlapping patches, the way we did with the needle turn patches. If not, you could always trace over the line onto the front by placing the shape on a light box. Many applique designs look harder than they really are because the shapes are created by overlapping other shapes. Understanding the concept of overlapping applique will allow you to view these patterns in a whole new way and free you to try designs you might have previously shied away from. The Birth Flowers Block of the Month patterns are filled with overlapping applique, and you can do it! Don't forget to share your progress with our Birth Flowers Block of the Month Facebook group or on Instagram with #BirthFlowerBlock. And check back to the website at kathykWiley.com/birthflowers for more tips and tutorials.